Welcome to ProutNews Weekly, where each week we explore important stories from around the world and consider what they can teach us about building a more just, decentralized, and compassionate society. For more than a century, economic success has often been measured by one number: growth. If production increases, if more goods are sold, if gross domestic product rises, we generally assume society is moving forward. But many people are beginning to ask a different question. What kind of growth are we creating? Does economic growth always improve people's lives? Can economies become more prosperous while also restoring forests, conserving water, and using resources more intelligently? Around the world, communities are beginning to experiment with the new approaches that suggest that answer may be yes. This week, we travel to South Africa, Australia, and Europe, where three stories illustrate how economic development and environmental stewardship can reinforce one another rather than compete. Our first story takes us to South Africa's Eastern Cape province. Much of this region has suffered decades of land degradation caused by overgrazing, erosion, invasive species, and changing rainfall patterns. As vegetation disappeared, soils became less productive, biodiversity declined, and many rural communities lost valuable sources of income. A recent report describes a major restoration initiative centered on one remarkable native plant, spekboom, a hardy succulent found naturally in the Eastern Cape. According to the article, international investment, including support from Amazon's Right Now Climate Fund, is helping expand restoration projects that will plant millions of spekboom cuttings across degraded landscapes. Why spekboom? Scientists have found that the plant captures large amounts of carbon while restoring damaged soils, reducing erosion, increasing water retention, and creating habitat for wildlife. But the project is about much more than planting vegetation. According to the report, restoration work is expected to create approximately 11,000 jobs, providing employment for local residents in planting, nursery management, land restoration, monitoring, and long term environmental management. Communities that once watched their land become less productive are now participating in rebuilding the very ecosystems upon which agriculture and rural livelihoods depend. Rather than viewing conservation as something that limits economic activity, this project treats healthy ecosystems as productive economic assets. The article argues that restoring nature can itself become an engine of economic development. One lesson emerging from this story is that protecting natural resources does not necessarily require sacrificing prosperity. PROUT has long argued that forests, water, soil, and biodiversity are forms of collective wealth. When communities invest in restoring these resources, they are not reducing economic development, they are strengthening the foundations upon which future prosperity depends. Our second story comes from Queensland, Australia. The Lockyer Valley is often called one of Australia's food bowls, producing vegetables that supply markets across the country. Yet, like many agricultural regions, it faces increasing pressure from drought and unreliable rainfall. According to reporting in the Courier Mail, local farmers and regional leaders are supporting an ambitious proposal to construct a pipeline that would deliver highly treated recycled water from urban wastewater treatment facilities into the valley. The project would provide a dependable water supply for irrigation while reducing pressure on rivers, reservoirs, and groundwater. Supporters argue that reliable water means farmers can continue producing food during dry periods, protect existing agricultural jobs, and encourage new investment in food processing and related industries. The article also notes that advanced water recycling technologies now allow treated wastewater to be safely reused for many agricultural purposes, transforming what was once considered waste into an important economic resource. Of course, the proposal is not without debate. Infrastructure costs are significant, and careful monitoring is essential to maintain public confidence in water quality. But many local farmers interviewed in the article believe the long term benefits outweigh the challenges. Without reliable water, agricultural production becomes increasingly uncertain. With reliable water, communities can plan, invest, and expand. This story illustrates a broader shift in how societies think about resources. Instead of asking where to find more water, communities are learning to use existing water more intelligently. PROUT emphasizes rational utilization rather than maximum utilization. Resources should not simply be consumed until they become scarce. Rather, they should be managed carefully so that the both present and future generations can benefit from them. Australia's recycling initiative demonstrates how innovation can increase prosperity while reducing environmental pressure at the same time. Our final story takes us to several European cities. A recent Eurocities report examines how municipalities, including Florence, Barcelona, and Dublin, are rethinking one of the oldest institutions in urban life, the public food market. For generations, local markets connected nearby farmers directly with urban consumers. In recent decades, however, many cities have become increasingly dependent on large supermarket chains and long international supply networks. The new initiatives seek to reverse part of that trend. According to the report, cities are renovating historic markets, supporting local producers, encouraging seasonal food, reducing food waste, and creating shorter supply chains that keep more value within the regional economy. Some markets now include food education programs, spaces for local entrepreneurs, composting initiatives, and partnerships with nearby farmers. Others have introduced systems to recover unsold food for charities or convert food waste into compost. The result is that public markets become much more than places to buy groceries. They become centers of community life, local business development, cultural exchange, and environmental responsibility. The article emphasizes that strengthening local food systems also makes cities more resilient during disruption to global supply chains. Communities become less dependent on distant producers while supporting regional agriculture and reducing transportation costs. This story reminds us that smarter growth often begins at the local level. When communities strengthen local production, local distribution, and local ownership, they frequently discover that economic resilience and environmental sustainability reinforce one another. This closely reflects Prout's emphasis on decentralized economies that maximize local resources while minimizing unnecessary waste and long distance dependence. Although these stories come from three different continents, they point towards the same conclusion. In South Africa, restoring damaged ecosystems is creating jobs and rebuilding natural wealth. In Australia, recycled water is helping secure the future of agriculture while making better use of existing resources. Across Europe, local food markets are strengthening regional economies while reducing waste and reconnecting producers with consumers. None of these communities is rejecting economic development. Instead, they are redefining what successful development looks like. Growth does not have to mean consuming more land, more water, or more natural resources. It can also mean restoring ecosystems, using resources more efficiently, and building economies that become stronger because nature becomes healthier. Prout calls this the rational utilization of resources, the idea that prosperity should be measured not only by how much we produce, but by how wisely we use the wealth that nature provides. Thank you for joining us for ProutNews Weekly. We'll see you next week as we continue exploring the stories shaping our world through the lens of economic democracy, decentralization, and human centered development.